What's happening, everybody? This your boy Charles Wells, aka C Wells, the host of SWAC Talk, coming at you with another edition of the SWAC Talk Time Machine. Today, we're gonna do things a little bit differently. We're gonna still talk about the 2009 SWAC Championship. We're not gonna go super in depth into the game because the game is not the part of the story that I want to tell. The game is the destination of the journey. I want to talk about how Prairie View went from where they were to getting to the SWAC championship. So this is gonna be a little bit of a Prairie View history. Now I can't tell it as well as some of those Panthers out there can, but I'm gonna tell it a little bit from my perspective, growing up in the SWAC and what I knew and what I saw. So um, me and Prairie View, we go back a way. They don't know it. 1976 was the last year that Prairie View had a winning season. Before they got on their run to their championship, and coincidentally, 1976 was the year I was born. So yeah, I'm old. I'm 40. I'm gonna be 45 this year. So that that's when this kind of got started. Prairie View actually did not. They didn't have much success for most of my life. I remember going to games and seeing Southern beat Prairie View. Sometimes it might be close, sometimes it was a blowout, but for the most part, I never really witnessed very many Prairie View victories myself in person. 1988 was the first year that I remember. It was a rainy night in Mumford Stadium. Prairie View had a running back named Victor Pegram. If y'all guys remember him, he ran roughshod over Southern, and they ended up beating Southern 20-14 in Baton Rouge. Now, 1988 is a significant date because that was before they got on their run in late 2000s. 1988 was the last non-losing season. They went 5-5 that year, so that's a date that's very important to this story. In '89, they had several players accused their coach at the time, Henry Kitchens, of withholding financial aid money from players. Now, this is all what I'm going off of. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what led to some of the issues. And at one point, they only had 12 players with a GPA over 2.0. And since the administration was slow to act on the demands and the complaints of the players, they actually ended up boycotting part of the 1989 season. And they finished when they finished the boycott, they went 1-9 that year. That was 1989. So they didn't do much. And then in 1990, Prairie View basically shut down their whole athletic department except for track and field because they had a lot of financial discrepancies. Money wasn't right at all, so they did away with football, basketball, baseball, everything but track and field. And in some ways, that was their version of the death penalty, like SMU got in the '80s. Um, when they came back in '91, they didn't have anybody on the scholarship. That team was full of kids who really probably shouldn't have been on the field that year. And they, to put it nicely, in '91 they got served something lovely. Nobody really showed them any respect. Everybody brought all the smoke to them, and they took their lumps. They lost to Angelo State, who's a lower division team. They lost their game 55-0. Missouri State beat them 61-0. Texas A&M Kingsville beat them 41-3. Grambling beat them 77-7, and that's not even the first L they took that year. Uh, they lost to somebody named Cameron, 51-6. Alcorn beat them 61-0, and the Alabama State just did them so dirty. They beat them 92-0. Valley, yes Valley, beat them 41-0. Texas State beat them 59-6, and their best game of the season came against against Southern when they lost 56-20. Now I'm not laughing at Prairie View. I'm laughing at the fact that I remember Southern struggling in that game against a team that everybody blew out. Southern was not good that year, but they found a way to put 56 points on Prairie View, but they still gave up 20, which was more points than Prairie View had scored all year leading up to that game. 92 would be more the same. The game would be a little bit closer. They still went winless. Texas Southern beat them 35-0. They lost 33-3 to Angelo State. They lost 33-0 to Langston. Grambling put 63 on them. Alcorn put 63 on them. Alabama State came down. They slowed down this year. They only put 44 on them. Valley put 35 on them. Texas State put 56. Jackson State shut them out 45 zip for my old school Jackson State people. And Southern again struggled with Prairie View. They beat them 12-7 in the game that they damn near had tornadoes on the field. I remember that game. That game was in Prairie View. Ugly game. Southern again struggled against them. But this would be more the same. Prairie View will have more losing seasons. They will ultimately go on to lose 80 straight games. They would go winless from 1991 to 1997. And not only did their football team go winless, but their basketball team went winless. It's hard as hell to go winless in basketball in a whole season. Not just in conference play, which is hard enough because you most likely gonna steal a game at home against somebody. Somebody gonna be cold. Refs might help you, whatever. They went winless overall in basketball. And the program just was, it just basically got a death penalty. And they, I salute every athlete that played ball at Prairie View in that period of time because they played through all the bull, all the L's, all everything. Those kids came out to play week in, week out. They a lot of times that they weren't gonna win. They knew they didn't have the talent that other teams had, but they still came out and played. And you have to loot that because kids that are out there playing and they're not on scholarship, playing against teams that have scholarships, those dudes. And I'm not saying that guys that are on scholarship don't play for the love, but if you out there and every dude on your team is out there just because y'all want to play ball, y'all playing definitely for the love. Your offensive line is not big enough. Your defensive line not big enough. You're not fast enough. You're getting, people putting 92 on you. You could easily pack it in. But these kids, week in and week out, year in and year out, they strapped up and they put them PV helmets on and they can't play. Now, from a perspective outside of Prairie View, other than them first 2 years, when they played Southern, I was like, man, this, whatever. We got a free trip to Houston. I'm not worried about this game. Why we even going to the game? Let's just go to Houston, go to Galleria, let's go to Sharpstown Mall. Let's just hang out. Like, man, don't even worry about the game. Even Shreveport, we played in Shreveport a couple times later. But it was, it was just, everybody looked at that. That was Prairie View. You when you looked at your schedule from 91 to 97, you knew that was a dub. You just knew it. I mean, like, the only thing was how close would they play you. Now, as the years started going by and that streak started building, games started getting closer. Prairie View started playing a little bit better. They started putting together a little bit more talent. And, eventually they was going to get them one. And you knew they were going to get them one. You just didn't want to be that one. Well, that one came in 1998. They were playing Langston in Oklahoma. This was back when they were still going on the road to sub sub D1 teams, NAIA teams. They went to Langston in 1998, and they got them a victory. They were trailing in that game 12-0, and they came back and they beat them. They only had 15 scholarships. Prairie View only had 15 scholarship players on that team, but they got them a victory, and they felt what it felt like to win. You see pictures of those kids after they won that game, man. They were crying. It was an emotional moment. And that was, they broke a losing streak that had almost doubled the longest losing streak at that point. Because up until that point, Columbia had the longest losing streak with 44 straight losses. So Prairie View basically almost, well, they still were like eight games away from doubling it, but they put up a ton more L's than Columbia did. So that's that was the first victory, and they they knew that they finally knew they could win, and the W started picking up a little bit. 1999 they won 2 games, so that's an improvement. They beat Howard Payne that year, and they beat Oklahoma Panhandle, so they still hadn't picked up a SWAC victory yet, but they were picking up wins. Um, 2000, they went 1-10, and they picked up their first SWAC victory, which was their only victory of the season. 2010, they beat Alcorn 25-22. So that's a very important milestone for them. They finally, had started to. They finally got a SWAC victory. They hadn't won a SWAC game since 1988 or 89. So that's an important mark for them. 2001, they won 3 games, which was the most games that they had won since since going back to 1988 when they won 5 games. So that's another improvement. They won 3 games. They beat Valley, they beat Paul Quinn, who doesn't have a football team anymore, and they beat Pine Bluff. So they picked up 2 conference wins that year. 2002, back to the normalcy. They went 1-10. 2003, they went 1-10. 2004 was an important date. They hired Henry Frazier III, who was the head coach at Bowie State. They brought him in, and things started to change at Prairie View. He brought in a different mentality. He started recruiting a little bit better, and the team started to slowly improve. 2004, Prairie View had they went 3-8 that year, which was one of their better seasons in God, in a long, long time. 2005, they went 5-6, so that was their first 5-win season since 1988. And they beat Lincoln, they beat Pine Bluff, they beat Jackson 27-9 that year. They beat Texas Southern, and they beat Paul Quinn. Now 2006, they went 3-8 again, but 2006 was an important milestone to them. Maybe not to them, but just in my life it was. 2006 was the first year that they had beat Southern since that '88 game. And just a little backstory on why that game means anything to me. I was at a wedding in Tampa, Florida, that Saturday when Prairie View was playing Southern, and my best friend was texting me the score. Southern was up, I think, like 20-3 or something like that. And I was like, oh, we got this, man. I'm gonna go ahead and enjoy myself. And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm hearing updates, getting nervous, man. Because at this point you have been beating these guys so many times, you knew eventually that they had to beat you, but you don't want that to happen. It was a hot day. They were playing at a high school stadium. It was a hot day. I finally got a text back to say that Southern had lost 26-23, and man, I was miserable. I know if anybody took any pictures of that at their wedding, they saw my face all turned upside down. Man, I was super hot. And there was a ton of Jags going back on I-10, with that mad face, like that old Kevin Hart face, man. They were hurting, but that was a mark to let people know that Prairie View was coming around. They started to mean business, because at this point, they weren't a pushover anymore. You knew that you had to bring your lunch pail and buckle up. 2007 was their first winning season since that 1976 season. They went 7-3, and that was the start of a good run that they would have. They started bringing in some guys. They started looking better. They started playing better. And like I said, they went 7-3. They beat Texas Southern. They beat North Carolina A&T. They beat Alcorn. They beat Alabama State. They beat Valley. They beat Jackson again. They beat Alabama A&M. So they positioned themselves for a really good 2008. And 2008 turned out to be a good year for them. They went 9-1. Think about that. They went 9-1. They didn't go to the championship, but they went 9-1 because they lost to Grambling. Um, they beat Texas Southern. They beat Texas College. They beat Valley. They beat Morehouse. They lost to Grambling 40-16 in the State Fair Classic. They beat Alabama State. They beat Pine Bluff. They beat Southern. They beat Alabama A&M, and they beat Alcorn. So 9-1 at Prairie View, man, you should erect a statue of the coach. But they had really started to bring in some guys. They brought in quarterback KJ Black, he was transferred. They had running back Donald Babers. Anthony Whedon was a wide receiver. They had they had a squad, man. I would put that squad up against pretty much any other team that you pick from a championship team. And that team, like I said, they only came one game away from making a championship. And they would turn around and do the same thing again, go 9-1 in 2009. And this time they would get to the promised land for the first time since 1964 as a 45-year drought of any chance of playing for a championship. That team probably, I would honestly say that team was one of the best teams in the SWAC in the 2000s. In the last 2 decades, so it was one of the best teams. Now, I won't say they were the best, but they were up there. If you made a list of teams from, from like, let's say from like 2000 to 2020, they would definitely be up high on that list. That team had solid defense. They had a really good offense. They were balanced. They only lost one game that year, and that was to New Mexico State by 3 points, 21-18. A game that they really should have won. I remember again they played Southern on Thursday night in Baton Rouge, which was one, I believe, two Thursday night games that Southern ever hosted on ESPNU. The second one I would never, ever, 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 ever talk about. So don't ever ask me about it. But real Jags know that September game in 2012, Thursday night. Um, I don't want to talk about it, but they beat that. That was a rainy Thursday night. I flew in from Tampa that afternoon. I got to Baton Rouge probably about 3 o'clock, just in time to hang out a little bit and go to the game and watch Prairie View play a solid game and beat Southern 16-14 in a game that could have went either way. Southern fumbled late. Prairie View there to get the win. They beat Alabama A&M 33-27. They beat Alcorn 34-14. They beat Pine Bluff 49-17. They finally got their first victory over Grambling in years with a 35-32 victory in the State Fair Classic. They beat Alabama A&M in the championship 30-24. And a game that was pretty good. Like I said, I'm not gonna really go into that game because I really wanted to talk about how Prairie View got to that point. So if you want to check that game out, man, Alex Hines has it on his channel. I say it all the time, man. Dude is GOAT status when it comes to HBCU games on YouTube. So that would be Prairie View's journey from obscurity to championship, and just for a encore, they went 7-4 in 2010, so they still didn't fall off. They were still a pretty solid team that year, and they would kind of fall off a little bit and start to rise again. So I just wanted to talk about that because when I said I was gonna do the SWAC championship game of 2009, I was like, man, I really just want to talk about how Prairie View got to that point because they went through hell to get there. Now I jumped directly into this, so I skipped all my little intro and stuff. So I'm gonna do my intro as an outro. So as usual, you can check out the socials down in the description, facebook.com/swagtalk, instagram.com/swagtalk, swagtalk76@gmail.com is the email address, podcast, swagtalk, anchor.fm/swagtalk. You can check it out on Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that. You can check that out. On Sunday, we'll be talking about the Sun Jags, the spring 2021 recap. We also have a YouTube video coming on Sunday covering that same topic. If you haven't done so already, man, subscribe and don't miss out on my stuff, man. I think I do a good job on bringing a different point of view of the SWAC. There's a lot of people that do SWAC coverage, and they got their own lane. I got my lane, and my lane is a little bit different than everybody else's. So enjoy everybody. Don't you ain't got to pick and choose. That's enough, man. It's a buffet, man. Take what you want. So don't feel free to subscribe and don't miss out on anything. Hit that notification bell because I do upload videos on Wednesday and Sunday, but I also drop videos from time to time on other days of the week when thoughts pop in my head when I'm at work. Sometimes I think of something at work and then I come home and put it on the channel. So it could be a random day, man. It could be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So if you hit that notification bell, you will be alerted that I dropped something and you can check that out. Um, comment. If you want to comment on any videos, man, feel free to hop in the comments. I always respond. I love to go back and forth with everybody, so feel free to comment. Hit that thumbs up, man. Like them. Share the videos, and that's it. I'm out, man. Like I said, I just wanted to talk about Prairie View and how they got to where they were because that's a hell of a story. I know a lot of people know it, but some people may not. So I just wanted to share that. So I like to thank everybody for listening. And I'll see y'all on Sunday when we talk about them Jags. I'm out.